Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here and welcome back to some more Biomutant loot tips and tricks, and today let's take a look at the best farming methods in the game. This is what I've been using to get all of my materials, all of my mods, all of the high-end loot that I'm still using in endgame, and pretty much everything else in between, so let's jump right into it. Now, I think it goes without saying that you should probably do your best to scour every inch of Biomutant's map, or at the very least in the next location you're into, because chances are that the next big reward is just around the corner or maybe into a container that you might find in your path. For that reason, I definitely suggest taking a look at the area objectives whenever you're in a new area, and specifically the section that mentions superb loot. This is going to give you a rough idea of how many containers of high-end quality are in that area, and these are usually going to provide some of the best rewards in the game. The more you venture out into the world of Biomutant and the more you level up with your character, the better the rewards are going to be from many of these containers. And at the same time, I would also suggest paying attention at some of these walls, especially with yellow markings on them, because you can break them down and often they hide secret rooms filled with containers that will give you access to even more rewards that are super useful at crafting or using immediately after that. But moving on to number 2, another amazing farming method is going to be the Bandit Outpost. You can see them on the map with this kind of structure right here, and once you find one of them, which is also close to your starting area, you're gonna be given a side quest to pretty much follow and find all 11 of them. But there are a few main advantages of like just clearing these up. First of all, they give you a ton of XP, so if you want to level up fast, this is probably gonna be the best method out there. You usually fight with too many bosses in it, on top of at least a handful of other smaller enemies, so that's quite a bit of XP. But most important, once you defeat the main outpost boss, you will also get access to its room, which will usually contain at least a few of these loot chests. And quite a number of them, especially in the end game, will give you at least a legendary item, if not multiple of them, anything from mods to gear pieces to weapons and whatnot. At the same time, I would also pay attention to some of these books that you will also see in the same room, as these will give you access to additional perk points or upgrade points on top of the ones that you already get from leveling up. But even though you might see the area getting a completion, don't stop there, and my next big suggestion about these outposts is to especially take a look at some of these outer walls and the higher up areas, because more often than not you will find at least 2 extra chests on top, and usually I found it that these were the ones that would provide me an additional legendary item on top. Like you can find a really awesome 6 or 7 star legendary jacket just by looking around these upper wall sections, and this is like common throughout a lot of the outposts that you will find out in the wild. Moving on to number 3, at some point in your journeys, especially in derelict houses, you might have found one of these old world devices, like maybe a piano or another instrument, or maybe a computer or a radio. Well, there's just like 5 of each of these on the entire map. You even have a side quest that you can complete once you discover one of them, but at the end of them you usually get a really powerful ultimate mod that you can use in crafting. So to give you an example, when you tune in all of the pianos in the game, you will get something like the string plonk, which is an amazing crush weapon that you can immediately craft, and it will deal way over 1000 damage if you just put one random mod on it, as well as a handle. The same goes with the guitars in the game. You get like the twing twang, which deals also really high damage, and this pretty much goes the same with like all of these devices, with the spiral groovers, with the washing machines, with the computers, with the radios, and again all of them are of ultimate quality, so you can create some really amazing weapons and gear on top. Also, since we are on the subject of finding old world stuff, also pay attention to some of these safe boxes, and they kind of look something like this. So there's also 5 of them on the map, and usually I found that these are high-end containers, at least they behave as such, and you will also start a mini side quest that will also point you out towards all of them, so that's not like super difficult to find. But in all of these I found at least one legendary gear piece or maybe one legendary clothing piece, and usually it's of really high quality, so it's super helpful to complete these and get something really awesome out of it. Moving on to number 5, we've talked about the monster hunting quest in one of the previous videos. You know, the one that you go in, you open one of these vaults, and you also get a guaranteed amazing ultimate or maybe even a legendary weapon or something out of it. Well, there's actually a second one that's pretty similar to it, but in this case you don't open up vaults, you open up old world storages, and they look something like this. Maybe you stumbled upon one of these locked doors with chains on them. Well, to open these up you actually have to find the monster that has stolen or eaten the key that is required to open them up, and usually it's nearby, not even like 150 meters away from the main vault itself, but it might require a bit of scouting before you find them. For that reason, I definitely suggest looking at the ground. Yes, this is like a true monster hunting quest, and you can physically see the markings of that creature on the ground leading away from the vault itself, so they will usually head you towards the right direction, towards its nest, where you will want to defeat it and take its key. With that key you can come back at the same door room, and once you open it up, this is how it's going to look like inside, and it will contain at least a handful of chests. Now, it happened very often for me to find at least a few legendaries in each one of these, sometimes even relics or ultimate quality items, and it seems that they do scale up with your level, but in many of these shots right here I was opening them up around level 20 plus, so you can already complete them at that stage. And since there's 14 of these in total, there's bound to be something really amazing for you to finalize your build and make it even more powerful than it's ever been, so definitely also go ahead and check these old world storages out. Moving on to number 6, the next thing I will look into right after finishing these is some of the side quests that you can complete for about 20 plus side characters that exist in the game, but specifically I want to talk about Honky right here because he has been one of the most amazing ones for me. Usually there's these side characters in the game that will require you to complete a couple of quests for them, after which they will provide a reward, but they also open up as actual in-game shops. So Honky right here, for example, gave me access to the cat metal helmet as well as a few other legendary clothing pieces, but if you look in the remaining of his inventory, he also has some really amazing ranged parts like the small clip, which is a magazine of relic quality and 1.5 stars, is also one of the best in the game if you want to reach 10 stars with your weapons and whatnot. He also gives access to a googly nog that is also of relic and ultimate quality, and this also goes for other pieces in there for weapons and armor, so it's definitely worth it to check it out. But this also brings me to the final point on the list, and that's the fact that you should not neglect the vendors in many of the outposts and capitals in the game. Every faction in the game will have at least a few of these outposts, and pretty much all of them have a number of NPC vendors for clothing, for weapon pieces, and for gun pieces. And checking these out every now and then is definitely going to be beneficial because they will oftentimes sell really amazing parts that I use to create some of the best weapons that I have right now in the game. For that reason, I suggest taking a look at these every now and then, especially once you reach level 25 plus, or even more so once you reach level 30, because then is when they start spawning some of their best loot possible. And if you're looking for something like an amazing weapon, like a two-handed sword or a crush, I suggest taking a look at anything that has the overpowered perk on it, especially so on a character that uses a lot of strength in their build. Now, if you don't find a particularly good gear piece, or if you notice that most of the gear in there is rare or below rare quality, then what this means is that you only need to refresh its inventory, and every single time you restart a game, you're going to notice that these vendors will refresh. I'm not sure if there's an in-game timer that also refreshes them, but every time I would visit them after a complete shutdown and restart of the game, I would notice that they would provide some new items on top. But this is it with the best farming methods in the game. Of course, the entirety of the game is all about farming, but these are particularly the ones that I've used the most to get the best gear in the game. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.